We took a month hiatus from posting a Dynasty Decisions episode, but we are back. Dynasty Decisions episode number 117. This is where we break down your Dynasty teams. All of your questions will be answered on today's video, breaking down 7 teams today, all of which are Mother Flocker submissions. For those of you guys that are waiting for your team to get broken down, a little queue update. We have about, 12, 13 teams as Mother Flocker submissions right now, and then 19 teams as Flocker submissions. So pour one out for those of you guys that are free submissions right now. I would say the time to get free submissions in are like January, like times where there's not a whole lot of things going on, not a whole lot of people submitting teams. So unfortunately, those of you guys that are free submissions are going to be probably waiting for a long time. But let's get into it, Danny. Let's not waste any time. Amen. Let's hit the intro. All right, so kicking things off, we have the first team of the video. We have Will, Mother Flocker submitter here, 12-team PPR, 1 quarterback, half tight end premium, start 9. So a shallow kind of league format here. Dak Prescott, CJ Stroud, those type of guys. Don't know why you have Dak listed ahead of CJ Stroud, something Danny would do. Tony Pollard, James Conner, Dalvin Cook, J.K. Dobbins, Miles Sanders, a bunch of other guys there, and you added some rookies in the draft by the looks of it, Kamani Vidal, Ray Davis, and those type of guys. Jefferson, Higgins, London, Tank Dell, Keenan Allen, and then you added in some depth guys there as well. And then Pat Freiermuth, Hunter Henry, Jonnu Smith as the tight ends. And then all of your future picks by the looks of it, 2025 and 26. So he said this is the second year of the league. It was, drafted in 2023, has a number of trades listed on the board that we'll go through as well. But just thoughts on the team overall. In a start 9, 1 quarterback league, remember, you kind of want to be pretty strong in the starting lineup and not so much in the depth.
Overall, I mean, you still have all of your picks in 2025, 2026. This is a solid team. You will have to make some moves, in my opinion, in order to be considered a top-end contender. But knowing the strength of your wide receivers, knowing the strength of your quarterback position, as long as you focus on filling out the running back and tight end spots or have something break right in those spots, I feel like you could be in a contending window.
Yeah, and I mean, looking at some of the trades he's ended up making here in March, he sent away the 310 for J.K. Dobbins. I'm never going to say no to acquiring J.K. Dobbins shares out here. Again, that's 310. Who are you going to give up there? You took Ray Davis at 312. So you're talking like Will Shipley or Bucky Irving probably is what you gave up for J.K. Dobbins. I will personally, and I tweeted this out yesterday, and everybody's mad about it, that J.K. Dobbins tore his Achilles. It's a death knell for running backs. But side tangent, when the guy is available for the 310 in Dynasty Leagues, he's a 16th, 17th round pick in redraft and best ball. I will take the swing on a guy like that when the price tag is that low. I know people don't like J.K. Dobbins because they know the data on torn Achilles, and I agree with you. If he was a 9th rounder, like he probably would have been 5 years ago, I wouldn't be taking him either. But he's a 16th, 17th rounder in redraft and available for late 3rd round picks in Dynasty. So that's why I'm taking the swing on him.
Yeah, exactly like what we've said with Nick Chubb. People are like, well, you do realize Nick Chubb is an older running back coming off of a multi-ligament tear. It's like, yeah, but when he's going, one of the best rushers I've ever seen in my lifetime, going in the 12th round, I'm willing to take him there. Like Corey said, if Dobbins was a 9th round pick, Corey would not be drafting him. If Chubb was a 7th round pick, I would not be drafting him. Same thing like when we talked about, don't compare the Patriots offense to a historical outlier with the Houston Texans last year. Okay. Most likely they will not be the Texans. But if they have that level of upside in the 15th plus round, I'll be taking that every time. Again, a little side tangent, a little best ball talk, if you guys know what we're talking about. If not, you guys can check out some of our rankings videos that we put up, some of our must draft and avoid players that we put up. But yeah, I mean, the point is when you're working with the market, it all depends. Do you feel at the opportunity cost, is the player a good bet to not only meet that cost, but has the opportunity to break it? And with J.K. Dobbins, again, you probably paid on the higher end, I would say, giving up 3rd round equity. I can see in some leagues people just being done with J.K. Dobbins, potentially trading him even for a 4th round type of pick. And if you can get J.K. Dobbins for a 4th round pick, yeah, sure, there's a likelihood he could potentially be a 0 in your lineup. But if he does look anything close to the pre-injury Dobbins, that's a big time value accrual spot.
Yeah, and I think people think it's black or white. He needs to be ready to go as the starter week 1. It's like we've seen J.K. Dobbins just produce spike weeks towards the end of the season. Even if he's, getting back to full swing because it's an Achilles tear and that kind of thing, you could still have that pick pay off later on in the fantasy playoffs. Maybe he wins out the backfield as the season goes along and that kind of thing. So side tangent over, 211, you traded away for Keenan Allen and the 404. Again, I mean, in a 1 quarterback league, giving away the 211 for a guy that's going to produce for your lineup in a 2 wide receiver, 3 flex league, full PPR. I mean, Keenan Allen's going to have some kind of value in that type of format. And then on May 7th, you sold off Michael Wilson and it looks like your 2025 first was the thing that you traded away for Marvin Mims and somebody else's 2025 first. So he didn't specify where that guy's pick is going to be, but I mean, looking at your team, I would imagine you're at least middle of the road, if not maybe on the higher end potentially too, of a 12-team league. So I hope you traded this pick knowing that you were getting a worse team's first in mind. That would be my only thing, because I actually would slightly prefer Michael Wilson to Marvin Mims.
I will say, I'm assuming you make this deal because maybe you're drinking with the buddy and he's like, yeah, I'll finish better than you this year. And you're like, no, I'll finish better than you. And then you're like, okay, let's put our money to the test. Let's swap picks and see which one ends up earlier. Like, that is what I consider this, because I mean, Michael Wilson and Marvin Mims aren't enough needle moving assets to really like be the focal point of this deal. This is just a straight ego swap. It's like, no, I'm taking your first because you will be worse than me when I win the championship, is basically what you're telling this guy.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's probably exactly what happened. The trade that you have on the table, T. Higgins for Trey Benson, Troy Franklin. I guess the best thing that you could get out of this would be a 2025 second of the options you have listed there. Mooney, a 25 second, or a 2025 third. Benson, Franklin in a second in a one quarterback league. This is like the starting lineup is the thing that matters to me. So to me, I would just prefer T. Higgins. I know you need a running back, quote unquote, but I probably wouldn't make that deal.
I mean, it is tough because it's like, it's probably about equivalent value, because if you got offered Benson plus a first, you're smashing that every single time versus, I mean, if it's Benson, Franklin, a guy that in a one quarterback setup is probably worth a early to mid second round pick at that point. He's a current late second rounder once we account. I mean, I guess like, because the one
probably still a late second in both.
Yeah, because the quarterbacks are going to get pushed down and still probably, yeah, that's fair. So if you're equating this out, it's probably Benson plus like the 210 plus a 2025 second. Again, fair on face value, but knowing that you don't have your own first round pick, you just don't have to make this deal now. If you want to make this at the start of the season, once we know what Benson's role is going to be coming in, again, you do have James Conner, so maybe that's another piece, another factor that it's not as risky of losing the production of Benson early on, knowing that you have Conner. I don't know. I mean, like, I don't mind the deal, but at the same time, I'm not overwhelmed by it. Like, if you can get the second and the third, I think I'd be more willing to do that.
Yeah, I think the fact that you're saying, oh, it's either Darnell Mooney or a second or a third makes me think that you're going to ask for the second and he's not even going to give you that. He's going to want to give you Mooney or the third instead. So for me, I just probably wouldn't do that deal altogether. Again, you don't have your first rounder, so I would be more apt to buy a running back that's actually going to help you production-wise, as opposed to Trey Benson, buy a Jacobs, a Saquon, a Rashad White,
Isaiah
somebody
Pacheco.
like that. Yeah, like you can buy those guys potentially without even giving up your own first rounder, especially given the wide receiver depth that you've built up on this team. So, I mean, looking at this team in terms of like future direction and stuff, I think you're going to have to go into the season and kind of see what you have. And if you need to make a move, you could. I just wouldn't force anything, because I do, I'm going to keep it 100% with you here. I do think you're probably somewhere stuck in the middle, and I definitely would not just sell my first rounder or sell the first rounder that you picked up, whoever's it is, to make sure that you can compete this year, because you're better off kind of seeing what plays out. If Pollard's bouncing back, if Connor's looking good, if Dobbins is healthy, maybe you have a chance of competing. And then at that point, maybe you can buy a production piece at tight end or at running back or whatever the case is.
Completely agree. Play it by ear in season. And also worth noting, like I said, you do need something to break right at the running back position. Well, guess what? If you enter it in a house money situation, let's just say that pick ends up, the 107, 108 in your regard. The other guy's pick ends up a little bit earlier. I mean, you're in a prime spot to add a really freaking talented running back in next year's class.
Yeah, absolutely. And the other thing, too, is if your team is not performing well, but your running backs are, maybe you could sell off Pollard or Connor for production and punt into 2025. So spent a while on his team. We can move on to Hunter's team, which is the next one here. We do have a 12-team PPR, 4-point per passing touchdown, half tight end premium. This one is a super flex. Drake May, Will Levis, and Bo Nix with Geno Smith in reserve there. Very young kind of upside quarterback core with Geno Smith on the end of the bench. DeAndre Swift, Tony Pollard, J.K. Dobbins. A lot of Tony Pollard and J.K. Dobbins in this video. DJ Moore, Malik Neighbors, Christian Kirk, Jordan Addison, Josh Downs, Troy Franklin, Jalen Polk at 305. That's insane.
Wow.
Gabe Davis and Jerry Jeudy there with Evan Ingram, Brock Bowers, Tucker Kraft, and Michael Mayer. Brock Bowers at the 109, the tight end premium is also mighty nice. So it looks like we see where he spent all of his picks. We see he also has a banked up extra first rounder next year. I'm assuming the early one is not his. The mid one is probably his. You got 2 early seconds banked up as well. Doesn't have his third, but very good situation to be in, I would say, looking at this team.
Yeah, and I figure out how you did that by just looking at the first trade you made. You got Will Levis plus the 105 for Bryce Young.
That's pretty insane, man. I mean, we know that the 105 is just absolutely ridiculous to be in
Got
that
Malik
trade. But, like,
Neighbors.
Levis for Young is a wash. Like, if somebody likes Young better than Levis, that's fine. But, like, the absolute most they should be paying on top of Young is like a 3. Yeah, exactly. I was gonna say a 2, but even a 2 is too much if you're a Bryce Young truther to get from Levis to Young. Yeah, getting the 105 there is just absolute highway robbery.
Insane.
He said he actually made the finals with this team with not a lot of knowledge of what he was doing. It was his first year playing Dynasty. Kind of got lucky, and he said
DJ Moore hot down the stretch.
Yeah, and he said he decided to kind of tear it down after the season and not sure where to go from here. But I think you're really well set up so far.
Yeah.
I mean, he also traded away Devontae Adams and got the 109, which it looks like he selected. He spent the 109. Yeah,
Brock
he got
Bowers.
Brock Bowers. So you got his teammate essentially for Devontae Adams there.
Yeah.
And then you sold off Patrick Mahomes in your teardown attempt here, getting the 103 Drake May, which is what you
early
spent
25 one.
A 2025 one, which I'm assuming is the early one that you're possessing right now. And then DJ Moore. Again, I might have held on to Mahomes there. It's probably an okay return, but I probably would have just held Mahomes, knowing that you had enough assets to recoup this team to begin with. I don't think you actually needed to make that trade.
No, that is definitely fair. Would you as much as I like DJ Moore, knowing that in your situation, if you're fully going to tear it down, start 11 league, would you have maybe considered, instead of DJ Moore, trying to get, again, if that's a projected 2025 one, how much better does his team look projection wise for 2026? Could you have gotten the 2026 one instead of DJ Moore?
Yeah, I mean, knowing that he's not going to have his 2025 one to help him rebuild, and the team's already projected.
That's what I always think.
Yeah, I think that's a fair point. I think I would have just not done this Mahomes trade altogether.
I think I agree too.
As much as I like Drake May, as much as I like DJ Moore, as much as I like the prospect of getting a high-end running back or whatever in 2025, you had Mahomes. There was no real reason to do that. You already had a good amount of assets to begin with, and the ability to collect more assets. So I probably would have just held pat with Mahomes, held pat on Patrick Mahomes. I didn't even mean to do that. But yeah, I think this team is in really good shape the way I look at it. I mean, during the season, you're going to want to try and sell off DeAndre Swift and Tony Pollard. Unfortunately for both of those guys, they haven't looked good. Recently, they closed out the season pretty poorly, so people might have to see them on the field producing before they're willing to trade for them. But those two guys are definitely on the hot seat in terms of players I would look to trade, as well as Evan Ingram too, just because he's a little bit of an older tight end, and you have Bowers, Kraft, and Mayer in reserve there.
I will say, obviously, I mean, this is solely for a potential increased trade value, but I kind of feel that DeAndre Swift, Tony Pollard kind of have a post-type sleeper appeal to them this year, where in the sense that they could really start the season really, really hot, knowing that they could be, again, we have belief in the Titans offense being one of the better offenses versus expectation on the market this upcoming year. Tony Pollard with a receiving profile. Maybe he gets back to his efficient running days, running behind that Bill Callahan coached offensive line, running in that Brian Callahan scheme. There's some optimism there, even if it's a 1-2 punch with him and Tajay Spears. And then with DeAndre Swift, I mean, you're potentially getting the starting running back on what could be the most improved offense in the league going into this year, simply because you have Caleb Williams, you add a guy like Rome Odunze, you trade for a guy like Keenan Allen. Yes, overall, does DeAndre Swift project for a 20 or 22 opportunity per game type of workload? Probably not, but if he's getting 18 opportunities per game and the Bears are top 10 scoring offense because Caleb Williams looks, I mean, I don't want to say looks like CJ Stroud, but looks like the next, CJ Stroud, Dak Prescott, Justin Herbert in terms of rookie type of prowess. Well, guess what? DeAndre Swift is going to be extremely valuable. So if you can, use that type of leverage, especially early on, if they get onto hot starts and trade that into first round liquidity, that's a big win in my books.
Yeah, DeAndre Swift is like the MVS of running backs, where he just keeps hopping from one good offense to another. He goes from the Lions to the Eagles to the Bears, which we expect to be a good offense there. So, I mean, I look at this team and I think you go into the season when your aging guys are producing big. Maybe you look to sell them off. Maybe Kirk is starting out really hot. Maybe DJ Moore is starting out really hot. Maybe Evan Ingram is starting out really hot. The two running backs, as we talked about. This team has a young foundation. You have a lot of picks to be able to add to it. I wouldn't be married to the idea of trying to compete anytime remotely this year. And I'm saying that because you mentioned that you're a new Dynasty player. So you might have the tendency to think, oh, I'll just cash in my first rounders and I'll go and, buy assets or whatever. I would be patient with this thing. There's no reason to try and win the championship this year. You mentioned you made the finals last year. I wouldn't make that, get that in your head that because you made the finals last year, you should be able to win the championship this year with an improved team.
I mean, if anything, it should make you more relaxed, more passive to potentially have that 1-year retool. Because again, if you commit to the 1-year retool, this team can be absolutely dominant going into 2025 on A. And B, I mean, I don't know what the splits are in your league, but if you finished second in the league last year, you probably got a couple buy-ins up front to be able to at least cover for this 1 year retool year.
Yeah, I mean, we literally use the term house money incorrectly all the time, but you literally might be playing with house money because you caught a couple buy-ins from coming in second place and you actually are in a house money window now. So you're in a pretty good spot. Like I said, we could probably move on to the next team here, which is from Alexander, a 14-team super flex. So quarterback's going to have a lot of value. CJ Stroud and Anthony Richardson feels probably pretty good to hit on your rookie picks from last year at this time with those two guys. Mostert, Swift. This is the all DeAndre Swift video, apparently. Tajay Spears, Amon-Ra St. Brown, Drake London, Romo Dunze, Xavier Worthy, Gabriel Davis, Mario Douglas. Good depth at wide receiver. And then at tight end, you got some guys, but nothing really proven. Dolchich, Mayer, Hunter Henry, those type of guys. And then looks like you got some picks banked up with some extra ones and extra twos in the next couple draft classes. So pretty nice build so far. I mean, great quarterbacks, great wide receiver core. Just need some help at running back and tight end, which again seems to be the theme of this video so far. He said, I have turned this team around from a complete dumpster fire that he first submitted before last year. Traded a bunch, essentially won 90% of his trades is what he lists here. And basically his league mates are nervous. They're worried that he's going to become a juggernaut.
I know that very well. I know that feeling very well.
They're worried that once he spends those 2025 picks, fills out his running back core, maybe gets a tight end worth a damn on this team. I mean, you're definitely going to be in a good spot. He basically wants to know, should I make a push this year? This is what you don't do. Don't make a push yet. You be one more year of patience, and then you can make a push.
Yeah, I mean, everybody just wants the instant gratification of competing. And again, like, there are pros to competing because, I mean, ultimately, you have another year to potentially make up your money. However, like we've always said, I would rather lose out on that 1 year and objectively put myself in a much better position to not only win one, but possibly win 2, 3 titles in the next 10 years, than just try to go all out for the one and then ultimately put yourself in a worse position. So like you said, this 2025 class is loaded to the brim in running back talent. And guess what? You could use some of them. If you get one of those, like an Ashton Genty, a Ollie Gordon, a Omarion Hampton, a Quinshawn Judkins, I mean, even later down the board, you got a guy like Trevion Henderson. Not to mention, I mean, if you guys watched the RB rankings video, you would have saw, I mean, guys like Jonah Coleman, Jordan James, I think can emerge for you. I mean, for example, Jaden Ott, a couple other guys. They have Damian Martinez. Like this class, we talked about 15, 16 guys in those videos, and I can see any one of them, including RB16 for me, which was Nick Singleton, RB16 for you, which is Donovan Edwards, potentially being viewed as a top 3 round pick after this year.
Yeah, I mean, you got 3 twos. I mean, you're going to be able to add depth to this running back class, as well as those 2 ones that you have, being able to add guys at the top. Tight end, I mean, you're going to need to figure something out. You're probably not looking at an elite tight end prospect coming into the league in the 2025 class. Maybe we get a guy emerges, Loveland or, Lachey or Oscar Delp or something like that. But for the most part, you're probably going to want to wait and see what you have at tight end currently. And then maybe if somebody gets injured, Laporta or, Andrews or somebody like that deals with injury, you could buy one of those guys on the low for the next following season when you should be ready to compete. Find your bargain window on a player if you can. And then if that's the case, then you should have a tight end for the future. But yeah, be patient, man. Be patient with this thing because a 14-team Superflex, CJ Stroud, Anthony Richardson is going to be a lot of fun, as well as that wide receiver core, assuming a lot of those guys hit, which I believe very much in Odunze and Worthy and those type of guys. So yeah, I would be nervous if I was your league mates right now. Yeah. So I mean, is there anything that you would recommend in terms of overall moves? Or are you just being patient? That's the only thing I would do right now.
Just being patient for the most part. Like maybe the one guy that sticks out, if you can sell, if he has a market value. Again, I don't know what your market value in your league is, but Raheem Mostert, if he has a couple big weeks to start the year, if you can get any type of second round liquidity, I'm selling him instantly. Like even if it's a contending, even if the best team in the league is like, yeah, I will give you my 2 and you are very confident it will be the 212, get Raheem Mostert off my team because you will be replenishing your running backs with youth in the next upcoming 2025 draft class.
Yeah, exactly. I feel like people are very much, once they see the fruits of their labor and it's getting to that point for you, you're like, my team's starting to look good now. It's like you can't be impatient. You wanna make sure that you're actually ready to compete. Your team is telling you, let's do this thing, not hey, my team's getting there. It's my league mates are starting to get nervous. Like my
1
team
or 2
right now
moves, I'll be there.
Yeah, in the no flocking league right now, I could very easily shove my chips into the middle, and I'm
Very
sure
much.
people would be nervous if I did that, but I am not doing it because if I wait one more year, I'm going to be an absolute
Yeah.
force.
Yeah, you wait one more year in that league, and my team takes a little step back because it's a little bit older. And I mean, your path to winning is virtually like almost untouched in that league, to be honest.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, AJ's got like 5 1s next year, so he's
Oh
probably
yeah,
going to be
right.
joining
I
me
forgot
on
about
that
that.
path as well. But let's move on to Logan's team here because I think that last one was pretty straightforward. We got a half PPR league, 12 team, super flex, pretty standard rules by the looks of it. CJ Stroud, Bo Nix as the main quarterbacks, Travis Etienne, James Cook, David Montgomery, Devin Singletary, Kendre Miller, Audric Estime, undrafted, wild 10 as well. And you also have Amon-Ra St. Brown, Brandon Ayuk, Nico Collins, Devontae Adams, Chris Godwin at wide receiver with Mark Andrews as the main tight end. So, I mean, I look at this team, aside from quarterback 2/3, you're kind of in a very easy, try and compete type of spot. You do still have all of your draft picks minus your second rounder next year, which feels good because sometimes there's teams in this position where, they don't have their own picks. This team looks actually a lot like my Get Faded team, just in terms of the way it's constructed and the rules and stuff like that. But, I mean, what are your thoughts on the quarterback position? Because I think that's the glaring weakness. Like, do you go and spend that first round pick on a Jared Goff, Dak Prescott, Tua Tagovailoa, somebody like that? Do you try and make a package for a player like that?
Not going into the year. Like if I notice, okay. I mean, first of all, we know that Bo Nix at this point has a solid path to starting. I would ride that and see kind of what this team's telling me in the first couple of weeks. And then at that point, if you realize, okay, Bo Nix, despite being a starter, is more of a quarterback 3 in fantasy rather than a potential quarterback 2. And then at that point, if you want to spend some of your capital to go get a quarterback, I'm more cool with it. But ultimately, like, it just feels to me that spending that first round pick on a Jared Goff type, I mean, even like to someone like that, kind of feels like settling, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, he mentions that the Dak Prescott manager and the Will Levis managers are willing to trade.
Dak is different. Dak's
different. I think he would go a long way to helping you compete. So, I mean, if all it costed you, or
first round pick,
because my girlfriend corrects my grammar on costed and cost all the time. If all it cost you is Dak Prescott, you can get him for the first and the third, or you can get him for, something on your roster, like
first and Sutton, or maybe somebody's hyped about QJ because they hear the offseason reports and it's Quentin Johnson plus a first and a third for Dak. Yeah, get QJ in the first off my team. Like there's a line in Dynasty because I mean, to be honest, as good as Tua and Goff are, like they're more back end quarterback 1 type of projections. Like Dak was the quarterback 3 in fantasy last year and was legitimately a top 2 quarterback with Josh Allen week 7 on. So like there's a difference in production at that point. People may be watching like, oh, well, Dak's also an older quarterback. Like, why are you so confident in taking him versus a couple of those other guys? It's simply because if I'm going to bet on an older quarterback, I want needle moving type of production. And Dak showed last year he can produce needle moving quarterback 3 in fantasy, quarterback 2 down the stretch in fantasy type of production.
Yeah, the only pushback I would say is because you have St. Brown, maybe Goff makes sense too.
Fair.
But at the same time, yeah, if Dak is available for a reasonable price, and a reasonable price would be a first plus a non-needle moving asset on your roster, like no first plus Adams, no first plus, James Cook, like first plus Kendre Miller, first plus Quentin Johnston, like you said in the third,
Singletary,
like that. If you're able to get him for that, that's a fine move to make. But you've kind of already done the thing where you're like, okay, I can see my team. I need to make moves. And you sold off Geno Smith, Tony Pollard in a second for Travis Etienne. Now, again, at face value, I don't think that's a bad trade. I think that's probably fine value for Etienne. But it did create another problem for you, which is that you didn't have quarterback production now because you moved Geno Smith. So that's kind of where I'm at with these types of trades, is that when you make moves like these, you often create other problems, which is that if you sold your first and third or whatever, then you don't have any draft picks. Like you have another problem that if you sell, a wide receiver because you have a lot of depth there, then you make yourself weaker at that position. Like it's what you're willing to trade off to be able to do that. I mean, the trade you made last season during the year, Trevor Lawrence in the 2 for CJ Stroud and Devontae Adams, has aged like freaking fine wine. So if you can make a trade like that and pull off a Dak Prescott heist for Quentin Johnston, a first and a third, like absolutely go make a deal like that. But I wouldn't force anything. I think you should be okay to feel things out. Maybe you can buy a really cheap quarterback, like maybe Jacoby Brissett starting like 8 games for the Patriots, and all it costs you is your 3 or something, and Bo Nix isn't starting yet. Or maybe just Minshew and Nix and Howell is enough to get you by. Like, I don't think that's terrible.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, he also said, I feel like I kind of overpaid for ATM, but what are your thoughts? He ends up giving up, what is that, May 25th, 2024. Geno Smith, Tony Pollard, 2025 too. Honestly, that's probably about fair value, I would say.
Yeah, I don't think that was a bad
To be
trade at
honest.
all. I mean, Pollard
Yeah.
and Geno to me are pretty shaky assets, especially
Illiquid
knowing you have
assets.
Howell too. Like you would benefit doubly from Geno not really working out, in my opinion. So I feel pretty good about that trade, to be honest. I don't think you overpaid really at all. I just think you just created another problem is the only thing I have an issue with it.
Yeah.
Because you don't really have a solidified QB2 early on in the season, unless, I mean, Minshew might start for the Raiders. So it's possible that you could use him if you're worried about starting a rookie quarterback with Bo Nix there. But I mean, I look at this team, you're obviously competitive. Maybe make some moves during the season. If things don't go your way, definitely be proactive to tear some things down if you need to. But if things are going your way, which I think they will, I mean, I look at the redraft ADPs of a lot of the players you have, and I feel pretty confident in a lot of them, then you should be able to just, go into the season and try and win a championship.
Yeah, amen. I mean, overall, you're in a good spot here. Obviously, again, a couple moves to make potentially in season. Definitely, if you can get Dak Prescott for a value, if that guy's willing to move him. Overall, though, I mean, this is a team in good shape. Start 9 league. You do have firepower at every single spot. Advantage with tight end with Mark Andrews. Advantage at quarterback with CJ Stroud. Obviously, if Dak Prescott is added to your lineup, you're getting another advantage there, considering he's giving you such point equity. Running backs are good. Wide receivers are loaded to the rim. I don't think we have to spend much more time. We can move on to the next team. That's going to be from Bailey. And it's actually funny. I mean, you mentioned one of our startups with the no flock in league. Bailey is actually, I believe, is it the flocked up or the flock me silly? I believe it's the flocked up league he's actually in, right?
Yeah, he's in the flocked up league, if I'm not mistaken. 12-team PPR league, 6 point per passing touchdown, one super flex format as well. Start 10, 12-teamer. He has CJ Stroud, Caleb Williams, hell of a combo to have going forward.
Amen.
Very light at running back, obviously. Chase, dude, you know how many teams I have? Chase Brown, Roshan Johnson, Audric Estime, and Ray Davis on. Like, I feel like I have like 6 teams with those 4 running backs on the roster. Garrett Wilson, Marvin Harrison Jr., Malik Neighbors. So I'm in this league now that I think about it, because I remember him taking Malik Neighbors 101 just because he had just 102 and 103 also. So he was like, oh, I'll take Malik Neighbors 101 and scare everybody. But it's like, no. I took Caleb Williams, Marvin Harrison, Malik Neighbors. I just took them in reverse order to make everybody look like it was a huge value. Romo Dunze, Jackson Smith and Jigba, Tank Dell, Troy Fry. Like, his team is loaded in this league. I can double check to make sure I know exactly which league this is, but I do believe this is I'd either get faded or the Bitcoin league. I can't remember exactly which one, but loaded team nonetheless. I mean, you see the extra 1s next year, you see the extra 2s next year, and then all of his 2026 picks. I mean, this is the type of team where you could get aggressive with this one if you wanted to. If you wanted to get aggressive and sell picks for running back production, I wouldn't blame you with this team.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. He also says here he had an offer that he declined, and typically you'll see, somebody's offering you Josh Allen. And it's like, oh my God, like I got to make this move. But in your spot, I don't mind what you did, man. I love Josh Allen, but it's like, given the complexion of your team, given the situation you're in, having all those young assets, having all those appreciating picks, like King Henry puts you in a strict win now window, the 310, whatever. Giving up Caleb, Garrett Wilson, 107 and 207. As much as I love Josh Allen, there is a very real possibility that if Caleb Williams is the quarterback 6 in fantasy this year as a rookie, who's going first in startups, Caleb Williams or Josh Allen?
Probably Caleb Williams, to be honest. Like, if you're giving up that much to go to Josh Allen, I just don't. There's so many outs for you to lose that trade. Whether it's Garrett Wilson side of it, the Caleb Williams side of it, you lose your insulation you're giving up on top of it. Like, to me, it's just too many great assets. It reminds me of the trade that I broke down in the worst dynasty trades I've ever made deal, where I gave up Josh Allen, Joe Mixon, DK Metcalf, and all those guys for McCaffrey. And again, that sounds like the worst trade of all time. Check out that video if you want to. But at the time, it was like, oh, Josh Allen was a young quarterback with rushing upside. We didn't know what to expect from him. I just gave that guy so many reasons to win that trade, and he won all of them simultaneously.
Yeah, no, 100%. That was tough. I still remember, because that was, I believe, the first year we had the channel. I remember we're going into
the second
draft.
dynasty trade I've ever made.
We were going into the 2020 NFL draft, and you're like, boys, I just made this huge deal. I got Kerryon Johnson and Christian McCaffrey, I think it was, right?
Yeah, and I got Jameis and Devin Singletary and someone else too in the trade.
Because I remember when you were saying, and I'm like, oh, I don't know if I would have done that. And you're like, what do you mean? I'm going to win this year. And it's like, that always happens. Like, when you're a newer dynasty player, you make the deal for the big ticket running back. But all jokes aside, I know Bailey's an experienced Dynasty player. Funny enough, Bailey was actually in the first league I ever joined back in 2019. We were actually in a league with Scott, bdge. We were in a league with him where, what was it?
Trade the Public?
Yeah. Trade the Public. And craziest settings I've ever seen, like start 13 league, 2 tight end spots, 4 flexes. And I
Just
still remember
brain rot settings right there.
I still remember I ended up winning the championship before the league pretty much folded.
Yeah. And this is, I thought this was a league that I'm in with Bailey. It is not, but regardless, I mean, I look at your team, Bailey, there's nothing, you can't do anything wrong, to be honest. Like, you have a loaded wide receiver core, your tight ends loaded, quarterback core, you got a duo of absolute young superstars there. If you want to make moves, I mean, sell off one of your tight ends, you could potentially do that. You could sell off Pitts, sell off McBride. I would probably sell off Pitts myself. You could sell off some of your wide receiver talent if you want. I mean, he's got a couple deals listed here where he sold off like the 108, 201, 211, and which became Bowers, Worthy, and Marshawn Lloyd, and he traded up for Marvin Harrison. So, I mean, you literally traded up 101, 201, and 211 and got Marvin Harrison Jr. It's just unfortunate that Xavier Worthy fell to 201. Otherwise, that would have been a fleece of a century for you there. It looks like he also sent away the 111, 207, and 301, got Tank Dell a first and a fourth. So, I mean, you basically swap out Tank Dell for BTJ straight up, which I think is a fair move. And then you got a first and a fourth for 207 and 301. Again, you're running roughshot on these guys. I don't think I need to tell you really what you need to be doing going forward. You clearly know how to win this league.
Hey, I love my boys, Xavier Legette and Ben Sanat, but if you're telling me that, again, I also love, these are just my boys, Brian Thomas Jr., Xavier Legette, Ben Sanat, like the guy who made this deal probably just like watched my rankings. Like, you know what? I like that. I like those takes. Like, I'm going to take exactly those guys. But as much as I love those guys, Dell first just insulates you completely. And if that first ends up getting you anywhere close to a Genty, Omarion Hampton, Ollie Gordon type of running back, Quinshon Judkins type of running back, that point, man, you add one of those fucking guys to your team. That's your anchor running back with a little bit to break right from a guy like Chase Brown, Audric Estime, Ray Davis potentially in season. I mean, I didn't mention the name Roschon because I do feel like it would be pretty optimistic to see him breaking out in that situation, knowing that Swift and Herbert are there. But we both like Roschon coming out, so who knows? Maybe he's able to take a step from his rookie season.
Yeah. It would all really depend early on in the season. How's your team doing? How are your rookies doing? Your quarter, if Caleb's lighting up the world and Marvin and Malik are lighting the world on fire, Odunze's a stud, you could make moves for a running back. You go like Brees has a hamstring pull, go buy Brees Hall. If Bijan's available on a team that's not really going to be contending, then go buy Bijan. Like, you have the ability to do that, but worst case scenario, you're going to be spending your picks on running backs next year.
Amen. Knowing the context that you do have 2 first-round picks on this team with the absolute freaking loaded structure you already have with those wide receivers. Tight end advantage too. We didn't even talk about the fact that in season, if McBride starts, performing early on and somebody's willing to give you a big boatload of a packet for him, whether it's like 2025 first plus a young running back, you can easily make that deal too.
Yeah, no, he's got a lot of outs to be able to cash out on some of his wide receiver, tight end talent, pick talent to be able to get some running backs. The easy part is upcoming for you, which is to get running back production. So let's move on to the next team here. What's up?
Quick, I actually do remember when I did a consultation with Bailey. This is one of the teams we talked about, and I literally remember him saying I have picks 1 to 3, and for the jokes, I'm just going to take Neighbors first.
Yeah, so the reason I thought that I was in the league with him is because somebody did that in a league I'm in as well, where they had 101, 102, 103, and they just took Malik Neighbors first because they were just trolling. Let me know, Bailey, in the comments if this is a league that I'm actually in with you, because I couldn't find it, but maybe I'm just forgetting which league it is. So moving on to the next guy that we're going to break down here, which is from Carter R. Shout out Carter. He's like training in Thailand. I've done a couple consults with him, so he's a pretty chill guy. 10-team PPR, half tight end premium super flex league here. Loaded roster. I mean, Josh Allen, Drake May, Bryce Young, JJ McCarthy at quarterback. Running back core is really light, but you do have some upside there. Corum, Gibson, Pierce, Estime, those type of guys. Brandon Ayuk, Jalen Waddle, Devontae London, Jordan Addison, T. Higgins. Just the ultimate number 2 wide receiver core of all the number 2s around the league. Xavier Legette, Ricky Pearsall, Javon Baker, loaded in terms of overall talent here. Dalton Kincaid, Tucker Kraft is the main tight ends. And then he does have some extra picks in 2025, an extra 1 and 2 extra 2s. I mean, this is a consolidate team if I've ever seen it.
100%. By the way, I love how you structured this team at quarterback and running back, where like you put the good players in like the 1 tier and then made a space for all the shitters.
I know it's very aesthetically pleasing here. And he says this roster has changed quite a bit since his last submission. He said overall he's happy with the movements he's been able to make. He said he was planning to tank his rookie pick and shoot for a window of 2025 to 2026 because it's an Emperor pot league where the pot will be higher. If for those of you guys that don't know what Emperor pots mean, it means that there's a couple years every 4 years or whatever the pot is higher than it usually is. He said he feels like he could potentially compete this year. Like, come on, dude, you're competing this year, depending on your running back talent. And he said, should I be very pressed to pick up a running back like a Josh Jacobs, Rashad White, Ramondre Stevenson, for example, or just continue with the plan for the roster and look to capitalize in the coming years? He said, note, I tried pretty hard to get my hands on Benson or Brooks. At this time, it is essentially impossible. He's told me, I've had consults with him, it's really hard to get running backs in this league. So,
hey, you have 2 first-round picks in 2025. That's where you'll be getting them from.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, definitely if value opportunities present themselves on Breece Hall, on Bijan Robinson, on Jahmyr Gibbs, on Jonathan Taylor, on those type of guys, by all means. But if their asking price is outrageous, which it probably will be in this league format, then just roll into the season. Maybe you get lucky. Corum, Gibson, Pierce, you can scrape together RB2 production with those guys, and you have like kind of a house money team this year. Maybe you make a trade in season after an injury or because the guy's trying to look to rebuild or whatever. But worst case scenario, like you said, you're just going to spend your 2025 picks on running backs.
Judging from some of the deals you made too, I wouldn't be opposed. Corey said you could potentially consolidate. I mean, the other move I would make, I mean, you can make more moves like the first one where you sold Adney Mitchell for a 2026 first round pick. And you can do that with guys like, Jordan Addison, T. Higgins, guys like that. I would do that.
I mean, if you did it with Mitchell, you could probably do it with Leggett and Pierce.
That's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying. But I'm saying, like, you could imagine what you can get for Jordan and Higgins based on what you got for Adney Mitchell. Like, you might be able to get a 2025 1 and 2 at minimum straight up for those guys and possibly even a young piece attached to them.
Yeah, exactly. Like find the teams in your league that have running backs but aren't a good team. Their team sucks. That's what I like to do in my leagues. Be like, hey, if I were in your position, maybe I'd be looking to rebuild, offer them Jordan Addison, a first round pick in 2026 for Jonathan Taylor and see if they do it. It's like, hey, I'm giving you a young receiver and I'm giving you draft capital. It's a great deal for you. Maybe it doesn't cost you that much. Maybe you can give him Xavier Leggett and 2 2s or something and get yourself a Travis Etienne or whatever. That would make some sense as well. Again, looking at your other trades, you still have Deshaun Watson and Miles Sanders made on the clock this year too. So Deshaun Watson, Miles Sanders, guys that are very much on the low right now. And you received Xavier Leggett, Ricky Pearsall. Again, given your quarterback core, I don't mind moving off of Deshaun Watson. I might have been down to just go down with the ship on Watson if I was in your position because you already have so many quarterbacks. And Watson, if he does bounce back, is going to be worth a hell of a lot more than this. So for me, I might have been looking to do that. But if you just want to cash out, wipe your hands clean, I don't blame people for that on Watson.
Yeah, I mean, I guess you can argue in his spot too. You're liquidating for 2 seconds, which on the current market seems like a very, very fair deal for Deshaun Watson, if not extremely valuable, to be honest. Like, this seems like 120 cents on the dollar compared to what I can see Deshaun Watson going for in a lot of leagues. Again, mid-second round valuation in some leagues, and you basically get the 208 and the 210, which I'd value over a mid-second. So I like it regardless from a value standpoint. On top of that, too, you're already holding some risk but upside with a guy like Bryce Young. So catching it on the one guy and then holding Bryce Young to potentially accrue some value, I don't mind kind of rinsing of the double risk, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I just personally might have sold Young instead of Watson and held Watson, just given that I think Watson's ceiling is higher because he runs and he's been an elite quarterback for sure. Kyle Pitts for Ayuk, I think that was a great move. I would definitely take Ayuk over Kyle Pitts.
Especially knowing you have Kincaid.
Yeah, exactly. You already have Kincaid. You already have Tucker Kraft and Hunter Henry. So hunker down with this team and maybe sell off some of these young wide receivers for running backs if you want to. Addison, Leggett, Pearsall. If you can get running back talent, by all means, you could definitely compete with this team. Don't get it twisted. This isn't the type of team that you have to be patient with. Like you absolutely could cash in one of those firsts or some of your young receivers into running back talent if you wanted to. Hell, you could even cash in Bryce Young for talent if you wanted to, because between McCarthy and May, you're going to be able to scrape together QB2 production for the most part.
Yeah, 100%. But overall, I mean, you're in a clearly good spot. You know what you're doing. I mean, Carter has been submitting for the last couple of years, it feels like. Comment it down below, because I remember seeing Carter in our comments probably since we started making the channel. So, Carter, if you're watching this right now, I'm assuming you are, comment the year that you started following the channel, because I really do feel like it's been since we've actually made the channel.
Yeah, and I think the next team that we're talking about here, Connor Seed, has also been an OG. I think he was in our listener league like 2 years ago. So, Next, the last team we're going to cover in this video, we got 10-team PPR, 6-point per passing touchdown, half tight end premium, super flex format. Joe Burrow, Drake May, Deshaun Watson, Bryce Young. Hilarious that we just talked about those two guys on the same team as well. Bijan Robinson, Devon Achane, Kyron Williams, Rico Dowdle, Audric Estime, those type of guys. Amon Robbins, Deontay Johnson, Troy Franklin, Michael Wilson, and others. And then Kyle Pitts, George Kittle. This kind of reminds me of my Bush League team where I have like just a loaded quarterback core, 2 really good tight ends, great running backs. I also have Achane and Kyron on that team as well. And then he has an extra first rounder banked up as well. So, I mean, I look at this team. He said overall, he feels like he has a top 3 to 4 roster in his league, feeling pretty light at wide receivers, especially with all the Rashee Rice stuff that has come out. He said he made the deal that he made for Rashee Rice like hours before the potential charges came out, and he thought he absolutely robbed the guy, but turns out he got kind of... Yeah, I mean, you kind of got fleeced a little bit on the Rashee Rice stuff because it came out right after you made the deal, or right before you made the deal, I guess. But he said he also took the mate. Let's just break down these trades because he's kind of just commenting on the trades here. So first deal he made, he sends away a late first for Rashee Rice in the 309. Again, probably not the greatest deal for you. Rashee Rice is probably worth less than that now. But again, I'm not saying this couldn't work out still. Like, I still think you could net positive here if Rashee Rice only sees like a 3 to 4 game suspension. When he comes back, he's the same player we saw as a rookie and all that kind of stuff. Also sent away Sam Laporta, 303, and a 2025 third. Again, keep in mind, he already had Pitts at this point. He gets Drake May, George Kittle, and a 4th. In exchange for Sam Laporta and those things there. So, I mean, Laporta for Drake May is kind of a swap for me, like a wash in terms of
I would take May.
I mean, I would say, given market value, I would say it's probably a wash, knowing where people have Laporta versus May for the most part. But yeah, I mean, netting
people are just faded.
That deal was pretty solid for me.
People are just faded for having Laporta over May, in my opinion. Like, dude, I've seen Drake May in some rooms. Like, he's a 4th round startup pick, and I'm like, dude, like, you've seen me put money to my mouth taking him in the 2nd round of startups.
Yeah. I mean, the last deal that he made here was recent. He sent off CJ Stroud in a 2nd for Joe Burrow, a mid-1st, and Devontae Adams. Again, I'm a big Joe Burrow guy, so I'm probably okay with this deal, but at the same time, a mid to late 1st, if it ends up being late, you probably don't really like how you're looking here, and especially if that 2nd ends up being kind of early or in the mid portion. I would say that I probably would have held CJ Stroud here, especially knowing that the reason you made this deal was not to get another quarterback. You probably could have just done something else to get a wide receiver instead of trading away your elite quarterback for a lesser quarterback. That's probably what I would have done, but
same.
I get it. You needed wide receiver help, so that's why you did it. But I personally wouldn't have probably done that unless you were netting 2 wide receivers.
You know, a little bit to break right at your quarterback position after Joe Burrow. You know, one of Drake May, Bryce Young, Deshaun Watson most likely have to be consistent lineup movers for you, but even if they are lower end quarterback twos, having Bijan and Devon Achane and Kyron Williams at running back, having, you know, the wide receivers that you do, having Kyle Pitts and George Kittle at tight end, you're in a good spot to be able to compete for sure.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, like, worst case scenario too, like, you have to flex one of your tight ends because your wide receiver core isn't deep enough to be able to start, say, like, anybody other than St. Brown, Rice, and Adams, and maybe Deontay Johnson. Like, if you're the rest of your receiver, yeah, like if Franklin, Wilson, Dotson, those guys aren't really starters, but like, I feel okay about one of Franklin, Wilson, Dotson, and Shakir. I think one of those guys should be usable flex production for you between the 4 of them. So again, he has the right thoughts here. He says, my initial thoughts are to stay the course and sell midseason if my team is doing great, or, you know, maybe package players for elite wide receiver talent if I can do it. But for the most part, he's probably going to cash out on players if things are not going well. Like, if things are not going well and Adams is still having a great season, then obviously you cash out on Adams.
Yeah, no, 100%. But overall, I mean, you're in a good spot regardless. Getting a little bit to break right at quarterback this year specifically. But overall, I mean, when you're talking about the long term of it, when Drake May becomes a quarterback that I know he will become, you're looking at a very, very strong quarterback core overall.
Yep, absolutely. So that is the end of the video. If you guys did make it to the end of this video, leave a like down below, subscribe to the channel if you guys are new around here. And also, if you do want your team broken down on future episodes, again, I will remind you that there was, I don't know, like 25, 30 teams that we still need to get to in our queue. We hadn't actually done a video in about a month on Dynasty Decisions because I was gone and, you know, all that kind of stuff. So we're going to work through a lot this week. I think we'll probably have 3-4 episodes of Dynasty Decisions this week, so we can work through that queue for you. But again, if you do want to skip the line, if you want to get your team broken down right away, the order we go in is mother flockers who use code FSE, flockers who use code FSE, and then free submissions. If there's any time that we have to add free submissions, we do those in. So if you want a free team review, you can sign up for an annual mother flocker package. You also during that year, you'll have submission priority to Dynasty Decisions, and you get a free team review on the site. And also, too, we do have a la carte purchases of team reviews now, where if you're a site subscriber and you want to purchase another team review, if you've already had yours, or if you just want to buy one, you get 30% off our specific team reviews. You also get 15% off the other creators on the site's team reviews. And if you use code FLOCK, or if you use code LAND and you want us to break down your team, you'll get 15% on the site because you are a site subscriber in general. So if that interests you, all that's linked down below for flockfantasy.com.
Yeah, and that's for the a la carte. For reference, like Corey said, in terms of Dynasty Decisions specifically, when we say mother flocker, when we say flocker, when we say free in that order, we're talking about FSC code users, mother flocker, FSC code users, flocker. So again, we support everybody that is on the site, but quite frankly, like we say every time, if you're using a different code, we don't actually see anything from that. So if you're, code flog, code domain, code land, and you're submitting for Dynasty Decisions thinking you are skipping the queue, those actually get sorted in the free submissions.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, just to give you guys an idea, that's the benefit of using our promo code, because otherwise we don't see any support there. But again, you see all of our content on the site by using, code land or code flock or whatever. So housekeeping aside, like, comment, subscribe if you enjoy. We will have another episode on Wednesday, so check that out for your team to be broken down. But with that being said, peace out, and we'll talk to you soon.